Thinking about this side, just take it to a personal level, and add this with a sort of a self-care, a health warning, if you like. Just to take a moment to reflect on what has changed for you since the start of the pandemic. So, what new perspectives might you've had on things? What different priorities might you now have? What new opportunities might there be? What things might not be there anymore? How have you felt you might have changed as a person, sort of confidence levels? We hear a lot about stress, anxiety, all those sorts of things. So, what would you say has changed for you since the start of the pandemic? Just a minute to think about that.
I think the obvious one for me is I'm not going into company premises as much. I think it seems to have gone to remote working. And I quite miss that, because I think you get a real sense of an organisation going in and informally mixing.
Yeah.
The other thing that's changed is my back's got really bad. I think it's not moving as much.
Yeah. Yes, I didn't even put those on the list, but yeah, the physical changes are certainly eyesight, the impact of 18 months looking at Zoom screens. But, some people have experienced a loss. Some people have recalibrated what's important in their lives. None of us are unaffected by what has happened. So what I was thinking in relation to that is, when we are coming at it from an HR perspective, when we're looking at strategy, it means that any decisions we are making on sort of old information is going to be flawed, because everybody has changed in some way. So we have to think slightly differently to work out whatever the new normal might be. So let's think. Say, those of you that are regulars to this boardroom know that actually you do all of the work, really. Most of it is about your discussion. It's about sharing your ideas, your own expertise, and learning from each other. If it's something that's new to you, then that's fine, because you can still learn from other people. But let's do a little bit of time to reflect on things now. So let me just put this one up with just a few suggestions for a bit of a reflection exercise. So in relation towards the new normal, where there is never a static state of nothing will ever change, we would never do that. We were talking about change before the pandemic. But think in terms of how you're evolving your organisation. Think about what have you done so far. Think about what has worked well. Think about the challenges you're facing now. And then think about, given lots of things that we know, and recognise there's a lot that we still won't know, what challenges do you envisage in the future when we're thinking about our strategy? What should we be planning for as part of that? So if you just think about those 4 questions. And what I'm going to do is to put you into a couple of, I know there's a couple of people that haven't got microphone and camera access, but I hope if I put you in 2 groups, that will, you'll have enough people to have a conversation. So I'm going to put you into 2 groups and just give you an opportunity to reflect on that, because you will already have done a lot. Now is the normal for now. A year ago, there was the normal for then, and we're always evolving it. So think about those 4 questions, and I'll put you into the rooms for a few minutes chat. And what sort of things? So, Amy, I won't ask you to feedback, but what things were coming up in the group you were in Amy's group? Somebody else like to just share some of the things that you were talking about? Or not? Anybody want to be brave? I know.
Do you want me to do it?
Oh, they always leave it. They just stay silent until you give up, don't they?
I'm too soft. So I'll just say the top one. So what have you done so far? Hybrid was obviously one of the top points there. What has worked well? Somebody said they're doing monthly "How are you?" calls with the workforce. and introducing a hot desk policy, and also town hall meetings. Challenges that you're facing now, recruitment was up there. So if anybody is recruiting, please don't forget us. And little plug there. And hybrids obviously working well. And then challenges, I think winter came up because we don't know obviously what's going to happen with winter, with COVID, and what the numbers are going to be like. So that was a summary.
And out of interest, obviously not front framing, I don't know who you said, hey, a hybrid working well. How are you measuring that? What indicators are you counting as things to? Out of interest.
I'll pick this one up. So we do a hybrid model, 3 days in, 2 days at home, 1 week. Then the next week we do 2 days in, 3 days at home. Measurement is there's been no impact on the business at all. In fact, if anything, productivity has increased. It gives the staff more flexibility. And what I mean by that is if they've got a parcel coming, they arrange for it to be delivered on the day they're at home. If they want to go for an appointment, they arrange to do that on the day they're at home. I think it's made staff feel more trusted, and I think it's also made them feel safer.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And the second group, so the one Elaine was in, what sorts of things were coming up in your group?
Well, we had 2 good examples, and I'll let both people speak. So David and Nikki.
Yeah. So in terms of what we've done, it's very much been a case of 2 headlines. So part contraction, reconciliation, reducing down workforce, sizing us right for the present, and then the flip side of that is now expansion. So we're a tour operator. Travel has obviously been hit particularly hard. In terms of challenges, where we're actually challenged is recruitment. Less so on the retention side so far, touch wood, but we fully anticipated there to be a large pool of candidates to select from. But the reality is quite the opposite. So the significant numbers have left the industry for other industry with no intention of returning, or intention of returning but not until they see confidence in the market. So in terms of what we've done about that, we've reevaluated our entire EVP. So we've moved from a traditional bricks and mortar setup to hybrid / home working. We can only recruit people if they are home workers. We've had to increase our offering in terms of salaries, and it's very much centered around a model of choice. So as opposed to prescribing you are in X number of days or out of the office X number of days, it's entirely employee led. There's only manager intervention in the event that performance is brought into question. But aside, so the upshot of that is that now our pool of selection is a lot greater than previous, and it needs to be. And that's going to be our ongoing challenges from the recruitment side, continuing to get the numbers in that we require, as well as then the bedding inside, ensuring that they fully understand our DNA when ordinarily so much of it would be captured by just learning from colleagues around you, seeing the way people interact, understanding the tone of etc. So our big challenge right now is understanding how to best replicate that in an entirely virtual environment.
Great, thank you for sharing. That's a really good example. Yeah, Lucy.
David, can I just ask a quick question, David? How many people do you have in your organisation?
Not a lot, about 40. So
okay.
yeah, we halved. So yeah, we're a small business.
Okay, thank you. I'm just conscious of time, so I'd love to just carry on with this bit, but let's just move on. So what I was then started to look at was, what information is around out there. And I decided you can almost find somebody somewhere that's done a study to prove any point of view in the current world. But there are some things that I think we can be fairly confident are accurate. This week we were hearing about the social care, the crisis in staff, and I mean that was a challenge for the sector pre-pandemic, and that's certainly not something that's gone away, and it's got worse for all sorts of reasons. We have heard a lot about the mental health crisis. Those of you who know me, that's a lot of what I do, mental health first aid training, and we're hearing so much about to be honest, it was there beforehand, but actually at least now we are starting to talk about it and have a greater awareness, whilst recognising that the incidence is also going up. We're hearing a lot about the Great Resignation. I think that came from a Forbes headline. How employers are forcing workers to quit was the angle they took, but other ones were, and that was based on, people were wanting to work in one way and an employer was saying they couldn't. Or you're also hearing a lot about people reevaluating what they want from life and deciding actually what they've been doing is not what they want to be doing and taking it as an opportunity. And then likewise, some other research, which was US based, but we've seen similar things here, that people, even if they haven't actually left, actually their intention to quit has gone up quite a lot. And then this came out just this week, and that aligns exactly with what you've been saying about the recruitment, the challenges of recruitment. Those figures there summarise and saying it's the tightest labour market we've seen in modern times. So, that is definitely creating challenges for everybody. And then this one I found interesting. Let me just move it on. This came from a recent report from the Adecco Group. And we talk a lot about flexible working, and I'll come to the next point in a minute. But I thought this was quite interesting if you can see the data on that percentage of people that want to work remotely against the compare after the pandemic, and how that varies at different types of roles, and also the impact in terms of what they want and what they expect to actually get. So you've got a gap there that creates a challenge for maintaining staff and for the engagement. You can find the report online if it's something you're interested, because there were lots of really useful charts I found. And then this one, the second one, gives us some interesting information in terms of the different demographics, the age groups across our workforce. There is a difference. Who wants more office time? And what I found interesting with this survey is a lot of the results they found from their survey were actually counterintuitive, or maybe not. If you think about there were more people with kids that wanted to work in the office than those that didn't. And the general feeling is that the people with kids want to be working at home because it gives them flexibility, but this particular survey was finding some different outcomes. And then I've just put that observation that flexible working is about so much more than just where you work. And I think that was a lot of where I was coming to, and with the last session we did around hybrid working, we have to consider so much more than actually just where that employee is based. That is just an element of it, but it is definitely something that businesses focus on without always thinking of the wider picture. This was something that came from McKinsey, an article there, and they had identified 3 risks of a hybrid workplace, which were just, I thought, quite interesting to consider. And particularly in relation to some of the comments that you've said, one has been in support of this, and one comment that somebody made, sorry, I can't remember who said it, about productivity hasn't been affected, but they were saying be aware of the risk of erosion of culture. And some of that was about, have you got that clear vision for the future? But what's the impact of just that lack of day-to-day contact with colleagues, where you adopt the behaviours of your colleagues? Values are not about that poster on the wall. They're about how people actually interact, how they behave with each other. And there's the danger that people can just develop their own way of doing things. So how, exactly as David was saying, how you maintain that culture, which we know is such a key part of people wanting to be part of an organisation. There was also interesting work around the productivity. So there was an initial boost of productivity when people were working at home. But what we are now finding is that that's coming at a bit of a cost, where people are blurring their boundaries around work and out of work time. Laptops pinging in emails on one side of the kitchen whilst they're cooking dinner on the other. So there are prices that people were paying, and actually there's been a recent decline in productivity with newer hybrid models. But again, which is great to hear from the example, how can you as an organisation focus on outcomes, not hours input? We were talking about that prior to the pandemic, but I think it's even more important now. Actually, it's what people contribute to the organisation, their outputs, that we should be measuring, not how long they're sitting at the desk or whether they reply to an email at 11 o'clock at night. So the summarising of this article was saying that we must focus on preserving culture, supporting people and talent, and continually revising their approach to the new normal. That we shouldn't be thinking, the last point is that things will continue to evolve. We shouldn't get stuck into thinking, right, we've got to set out how we're going to be in the future. It's actually, right, this is working for now, but we stay open to fine-tuning our organisational model according to business need, wider need. And interestingly, we so much talk about hybrid working, but only 1 in 4 of us actually did manage to work from home or did do hybrid working during the pandemic. But we tend to think as if it was sort of everybody. And this next slide was just the checklist of things. Hang on, if it will move on, it is. There we go. This was a checklist of things that we talked about in the last webinar we had around this subject. Because when we're talking about hybrid working, and say it's more than about where the desk is based. It's about, how are we going to manage the communications? And I mean through the changing to type, how we're working, but ongoing communication, how are you getting feed information filtering down, what opportunities are there for employee voice, all these sorts of things. How about the inclusive cultures? What impact is this happening on where you were going with inclusion, diversity, and equality? We know home working had disadvantaged certain groups of people, but it's about much more than that. How are we considering career progression? We're missing out on a lot of that informal mentoring. The visibility that people might have in an office is lost when we're all just connecting occasionally via Zoom and Team. So how are you creating equality and opportunities? How are you developing and mapping careers and providing people with the opportunities? Management skills, they're different. Some of them are the same, but actually people need more skills about the trust you've already mentioned, enabling autonomy, looking, how the skills to build high-performing teams you need to really look at, but coming very much from a place of trust and empowerment and output, not input. Performance management is sort of linked to some of the others. How are you measuring your performance? How are you driving in performance improvement, not just looking at what are you, when things aren't going so well. Well-being and mental health, in my world, I was going to put that at the top of the list, but it's certainly not at the bottom of the list in priorities. But, how are you bringing all of that together? How are you considering the impact on well-being for people? Because we know people have different ways of meeting their well-being needs. We may have models of well-being, so there are different things that we all need for our well-being, but the way we meet those is different. So how are we allowing that? And then, the practical and cost implications of the different options, we have to factor that in, that the office space, the technology, actually the workstations people have got from home, all those sorts of things. And I haven't even put on there the whole debate, which I think is a fascinating one, about salary. If we go to that, certainly if we're looking at output, then we shouldn't be looking at salaries based on, well, they don't have London waiting anymore, or that, they're working at home, so they haven't got commuting costs. But how do you set up a pay structure that works, that is right, that is fair, and works for your business? There's one or two things I've thrown in there, isn't there? And where we are now is knowing that, which creates some of the challenge. Employee engagement increased last year. And I think we know part of the reason that happened was we had a shared purpose. We all needed to get through this time together. So if we were in an organisation, we were working together to make sure we still had an organisation at the end. But actually, it has been going down in 2020. So that does mean we have a challenge as to what are the things that we need to tick on the employees' checklist to engage them, to want them to be part of the organisation going through. So we're not contributing to those figures of the mass exodus of employees that media is telling us about. So there, when I was thinking, well, I was playing with words in my head, and actually I thought sometimes the oldest models, or the most basic models, are actually the ones that work. And I was just thinking, SWOT analysis, where we are now, what have we got? What are the strengths in our organisation? Where have we got things that could create vulnerabilities for us? Where are the opportunities? And then the threats, and thinking both micro, as in your organisation, and thinking macro as well. So what we know about wider demographic changes. Do you remember we were talking about the ageing workforce before the pandemic became the only topic of conversation? We know that the needs and the requirements of younger people coming into the workforce are different. So, how are we managing for that? We're hearing about burnout increasingly as an outcome of how people have been working over the last year. So I thought actually that is the probably the simplest way just to stock take where you are now. And you can't do all of that. There are so many things to think about. So I thought do a discussion now, really pick out in your group where you think your time is best focused. So given the challenges that you're aware of, micro, macro level, the limit on your resources, resources, I was meaning you as HR. So whether you're a standalone role or whether you're part of a team, but actually, HR do not have all the answers. They do not have an infinite supply of resources, contrary to what people seem to expect sometimes. But actually, given that, and given what you know of your organisation, where is your time and energy best spent now? Okay, so what I'm going to do is put you back into the groups you were in before, and really just give you an opportunity to chat round whatever of the issues that are part of that towards a new normal, recognizing actually we never get there. We are always evolving as an organisation, but what are the things that Kate put the roots there? If we think of sort of the oak tree analogy, we need the culture, the key things that we need to have in place as the foundations, which is really where we need to put all our energy. Okay, so time, we're having time. I'm gonna have to we'll just do 8 minutes on that, and then that gives a few minutes just to share back before we close. All right, so I'll keep you in the same room so you can carry on your conversation. Welcome back. I'm looking at the clock that's rapidly heading towards 1:15. So we're have a little bit of flexibility on timing, but obviously I don't know what you've got coming up into your diary. Would anybody like to share some of what sort of the thread of your conversation? And Amy wasn't in a group, so you can't rely on her this time. Anybody like to share anything? What's the top thing you're going to put on your priority in terms of your time and energy? Where do you think you'll make the most difference?
So we spoke about what I spoke. I'm sorry for taking the whole time, but spoke about smart ways of managing hybrid teams. So a lot of the focus for our organisation is upskilling our managers, so that they're well equipped to manage hybrid teams.
Thank you. Yeah, that is a key one. And also making sure they're modelling the behaviours they're encouraging their staff to do, which is one that I talk about quite a lot, whether it's around habits of working, speed of response, mental health. So actually making sure that one of the questions I often ask when I'm training managers on the mental health, and they'll always say, oh, my door's always open, people can come and speak to me. And I say, okay, that's brilliant, really pleased. So are you comfortable to go and speak to your manager in the same way as you want your team to speak to you? And there's often a bit of a, oh no, it's not quite that easy, is it? So just as a throw in there. Any other points you want to add in from the other group's discussion? So that was the group with Claire and Mark. Anything from your side?
I talked about wellbeing, Marion, because it's a huge point for me at the moment, with everyone coming back into the office in various ways and formats, but also it's keeping an eye on what's happened to them over that year where they've not been in. Some of them have gone through quite big life-changing experiences, and it's about catching that before it becomes something that gains a huge momentum. So I have actually emailed you about some mental health first aid training.
Right. Oh, good. Thank you very much. I'll get in touch with you. So, yeah, so I hope, I'm just conscious of time, I hope it's given you just a bit of, we were never going to be able to come out with clear answers. Oh, it's obviously not wanting to share. Can you see it or not?
No.
No, I've got a black screen. All right, we won't bother share that. Yeah, I think it's just internet. So yeah, you weren't ever going to be able to come away with a clear to-do list, and if that's what you were hoping for, I'm sorry. But I thought what I hope is that it's given you an opportunity just to think about all the different elements that we do need to consider. And I would certainly encourage you to be thinking, bigger picture, longer term, in as much as we can, because it is so easy just to get caught in the day-to-day stuff that I'm not, needs to be done. I'm not saying that, we know if we don't pay people right properly and, their IT doesn't work, it's very easy to disengage people, but actually make sure we don't get hijacked all the time for those things. And we do find ways of actually doing the things where we as HR can actually really add the value. It's where we can actually really demonstrate the difference we make in organizations. So thank you. I will pass back to Amy to close and remind people what we're doing over the next few weeks.
Yeah, thanks, Marion. Thanks for that. And thank you everyone for attending. So our next event is actually a webinar with Warner Goodman. I think some of you might have attended some of their webinars before, based on diversity and inclusion. It's obviously a huge topic at the moment. So really looking forward to that. That's on the 2nd of November. So yeah, I'll pop all the details to that on the email that I send out to you all after the call.